Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. It is budget time again. For those of us in academics, a budget is a mere financial statement. It is a cash flow statement, a summary of what are the expected receipts of the government and from where, and a summary of what are the expected expenditures of the government and on what programs. The budget also talks about as a financial statement of how is the government going to meet its deficit between its expenditure and its receipts. For those in power, for those in politics, the budget is a political statement, a statement of what are the policies that the ruling party proposes to pursue based on its philosophy and how is it going to spend the taxpayers' money. It is a statement as far as the politician is concerned of how does it propose to pursue all the promises that it would have made to the taxpayers, to the citizens of the country when it went to the polls. Every party has its own philosophy, and to that extent, it reflects on the budget of the country when that party is in power. Yet another aspect of any budget, when it is prepared and announced by the government, a budget like that of the union government, is that to us it is expected to have three distinct parts. One part which talks about what are the immediate problems and challenges of the country and its economy and how does it propose to resolve it. The second part is about what is the medium-term strategy that the country needs in order to ensure that its economy grows at a good rate. And the third part is a vision part. What is the vision that the government proposes to set for the country and its economy over the long term? So there has to be a part to do with short-term problems, a medium-term strategy, and a long-term vision for the country and its economy. With this in mind, let's talk about the budget that has just been announced by the Finance Minister in the morning today. In the run-up to this year's budget, what were the short-term challenges which even have a long-term and medium-term implication? The challenges on hand that the budget, according to us, needed to delve in and tackle and give solutions were serious and on many fronts. And those are the problems of unemployment, the problem of inflation, the problem of the MSME sector being in such a bad shape, the sector has been struggling, the problem of inequality of income, the problem of the consumer unwilling to spend because he doesn't have income, he doesn't have confidence, and of course, the problem of the private sector unwilling to invest, even though it is loaded with cash flows, even though there is enough money available in the system to give to the private sector to invest, even though the interest rates are at such a low, and yet the private sector is unwilling to invest and add to capacity. These to us have been the challenges that the country faces, which the economy faces, which the common man faces. And to us, the budget should have delved in giving solutions to all these challenges and problems that we are facing today. Inflation is a great problem. Unemployment is a serious issue. Increasing inequality is equally serious. And a consumer who lacks confidence in his present and his future and is thus not willing to spend, perhaps because he doesn't even have the money, is again a grave issue. And all those should have been dealt with. It is with this background that we would have expected the budget to be formulated and announced by the government today. But what we see is completely different. To us, none of these issues that the country faces today have been gone into by the finance minister. Most of them have not even been spoken about in a speech, almost not recognizing that there are challenges that need to be handled. And this tone of the budget, this tone of the budget speech to us was evident in the economic survey which was presented to the parliament yesterday. The economic survey spoke about a very glossy situation according to us. It pointed out that during the current financial year, the economy is expected to grow at the rate of 9.2%. To us, that 9.2% is truly not impressive because it is a comparative rate. It is founded on the figures of growth and contraction of the economy which were recorded in the last financial year. And thus, there is just no glossy situation in that kind of growth figure which is being spoken about. It's just a comparative figure, it's just a data, and it does not match with the ground reality that we see it. The ground reality that we see as far as the growth is concerned is that growth has come in spurts. It has not been consistent, it has not been durable, it has not been sustainable quarter after quarter, or rather it has not sustained month after month. Sequentially, what we are seeing is that growth has gone up and gone down. And that is because this growth has primarily come from pent-up demand, from festival demand, which has just given a one-time boost to the country's growth. What this budget needed to provide was a growth booster. Further, the economic survey estimates that in the coming financial year, the Indian GDP is expected to be among the fastest growing in the world. And it estimates that the growth rate in the coming financial year will be in the range of 8 to 8.5%. But then, even this growth is founded on a lot of assumptions which may not materialize. In projecting this kind of a growth rate, what it assumes is that there will be a normal monsoon. It may be, or it may not be so. It then assumes that the oil price will average at about $70 to $75 a barrel in the year. Let me point out, at the moment, the international oil prices are at $90 to a barrel and they are on an upward trajectory. So that is the second assumption on the basis of which an 8.5% growth rate is projected. It also assumes that international supply chains which are at the moment disrupted will come back to normal. And it also assumes that the liquidity withdrawal by central banks worldwide will not be sudden. It will be in a very calibrated manner such that growth is not disturbed. We think that all these variables are extremely uncertain and thus trying to rely on 8 to 8.5% growth rate is being a little speculative. Further, if we look at the current situation in the economy where growth is uncertain, where inflation is unnerving the producer and the consumer, where jobs are just not coming by, and because of which the consumer is not spending, they all go to show that some kind of a growth booster, some kind of a confidence booster was needed in the budget. What we see today is that it was missing. So, what did the FM speak at the Parliament today in a budget speech? The Finance Minister presented the 9th budget of the Modi government and her own 3rd as the Finance Minister of the country. What we noticed was that a large part of the budget speech of the Finance Minister was about the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which is India touching 75 years of independence. And that it said that we have entered the Amrit Kal, which is the 25-year run-up period from India at 75 to India at 100. That's the Amrit Kal. 20 pages out of the 29-page speech of the Finance Minister were devoted to initiatives proposed to be undertaken by the government over this Amrit Kal period. And those proposals were devoid of details. They were devoid of definitives. They were devoid of specifics. And the time period and the financial numbers too were missing. They were just initiatives and proposals, which to us meant it was heavy on intent, low on content. The budget is primarily the annual estimated cash flow statement of the government, which tells us about the details of its receipts and payments during the current year, as also in the forthcoming financial year, as we just spoke. The 20 pages of the speech of the Finance Minister that were devoted to the Amrit Kal, that is the next 25 years of India's journey, were to us less of a budget speech and more of a political announcement with no data, no numbers, either because those had not yet been discussed, deliberated and finalized by the Finance Minister or by the government, or because by giving such specifics, the government obviously renders itself to be questioned, to be accountable, which is not willing to do, particularly when the budget statements and proposals that are mentioned are very generic in nature, devoid of details and devoid of specifics. That's what we saw today. All the 20 pages of the budget speech dedicated to the Amrit Kal were for achieving the vision of the government, and it mentioned what the vision was. It said that the vision of the government that it is pursuing is complementing the macroeconomic level focus with microeconomic level, all-inclusive welfare focus. It then said that its objective was to promote a digital economy and fintech, technology-enabled development, energy transition, and climate intent. And finally, its objective was relying on a virtuous cycle starting from private investment with public capital investment helping to crowd in the private investment. These were the objectives. But as we said, the numbers were missing. The budget thus sought to set up a blueprint for the Amrit Kal, which is futuristic and inclusive, and with the following priorities on which various programs announcements were made in a very generic manner. What are the priorities? The priorities that the budget spelled out are projects under the PM Gati Shakti program. Priority in terms of inclusive development. Priority in terms of productivity enhancement and investment, sunrise opportunities, energy transition, and climate action. And a priority in terms of how do we finance investments. These were the initiatives that were announced, as we said, devoid of details, and thus to us, they were more a statement of intent without any content. Let us now talk about the tax proposals and the tax amendments which have been proposed by the Finance Minister. At the outset, the FM thanked all the taxpayers of India who she said have contributed immensely and have strengthened the hands of the government. The first proposal is in terms of an updated tax return under the Income Tax Act, and that has been announced in order to reduce litigation. She said that if any taxpayer finds that he or she has forgotten to return certain income to tax, that person can do so even within 2 years of the end of the assessment year by filing an updated tax return but paying a higher amount of tax. In the matter of taxation of cooperatives, she said that the alternate minimum tax rate in the case of cooperatives is being brought down to 15% and surcharge is being brought down to 7% in order to make the tax rates that are paid by cooperatives at par with those which are paid by the corporates. She announced the tax relief to persons with disability in respect of insurance premium paid by them on certain policies for the benefit of those with a disability. The fourth proposal that she said is in respect of the NPS contribution which is paid by the central government and by the state government. She said that the deduction that central government employees get in respect of such premium is to the tune of 14%. On the other hand, the rate in the case of state government employees is a mere 10%. And she said that it is being increased to 10% in the case of state government employees also. In the matter of startups, she said that those startups which are established by 31st March 2023 will also be eligible for incentives which are there in the Income Tax Act. This deadline earlier was till 31st March 2022. It has now been extended by 1 year for the benefit of startups to give them the tax holiday which is there in the Income Tax Act for the startups. She then said that a concessional tax which was announced for corporates which start their manufacturing and production till 31st March 23 is now being extended to 31st March 24. So if a newly set up corporate sets up its operations and production by 31st March 24, it will be eligible for the concessional tax rate. She then announced that digital assets, which is your crypto types, are going to be taxed at the rate of 30% in gains made on them. There will be no deduction for any expenditure incurred in such gains except for the cost of purchasing that digital asset. The losses that are incurred in these transactions will not be set off against any other income, and that the transactions will be subject to deduction of tax at source at the rate of 1%. She announced numerous tax incentives to promote IFSC, which is the International Financial Services Center at Gandhinagar, for residents in respect of their income from offshore derivative instruments, royalty, interest, lease of ships, and PMS services. She also announced the rationalization of surcharge in respect of capital gains taxation. Yet another announcement that she made was that the health and education cess which is paid by taxpayers will not be deductible as a business expenditure, which a few high courts had announced. She said that cess and the surcharge constitutes a part of the tax rate and thus it cannot be allowed as a business expenditure, which some high courts had said. She also announced measures to ensure that litigation is managed in such a way that the repetitive and frivolous appeals are avoided by the Income Tax Department. And the final major tax initiative in direct taxes that she said was that brought forward losses will not be set off against undisclosed income, which is found during searches and surveys. These were the direct tax relief measures or amendments that the Finance Minister announced. She also then announced that GST collections in the month of January have gone up to about 1.41 lakh crores, which is a record of sorts. To us, the success of the GST law should not be measured in terms of the tax collections. The law itself is such that tax collections will keep going up as spending goes up. And the law also has been designed in such a way as to pull out taxes from taxpayers. That cannot be a metric of its success. The metric of the success, according to us, of a GST law is in terms of, is it simple, is it fair, and is it easy to follow? In respect of indirect taxes, the Finance Minister announced a number of amendments to customs rates and excise duty rates in particular, which are very industry specific and are not being discussed here. The fact of the matter is that this budget does not have the growth booster that the economy badly needed. It also does not address all those burning issues which need a resolution, which need a solution. To us, it's a wasted opportunity, yet another year when the economy needed relief, when the economy needed reforms, when the economy needed all kinds of measures for its revival, and that opportunity has been let to go by. The ball is primarily in the government's court. We've had 2 years of an economic slowdown and a contraction on account of the COVID pandemic. Somebody needs to spend. Somebody needs to take the initiative in order to ensure that the economy kickstarts. And that somebody had to be by the government. The government did not take that initiative. All those Amrit Kal measures are very long-term issues whose specifics are not known and whose impact on the economy also not known. But what is known to us today is that all those burning issues where we needed some relief, some resolution have been overlooked by the government, maybe for political reasons or maybe because it just doesn't have the ideas in order to revive and repair the economy. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.